Hello everyone, Kaos Nova here, and this is the newest episode of Battle Angel Alita lore. The Mutants. Many characters in the Battle Angel universe are known for being enhanced by cybernetics. Although there are many, and most of them are enhanced by cybernetics, there are some who are enhanced biologically, and they are known as the Mutants. Mutants are often outcast or generally feared by much of society in this universe. However, there are those who have played a significant role in the overall plot of Battle Angel Alita. And these are what we shall explore today.
So this goes beyond the plot of what you may have seen in the animated film or the live-action movie, Alita Battle Angel. So I'm just warning you because this is advanced, or it goes, much of it goes way beyond what you see in the film. So, but you can find out about it in the books. So my recommendation is to read the books if you don't want it spoiled before seeing this, and if not, you have been warned. So don't be surprised if it's things you haven't read yet. So there are types of creatures in the Battle Angel Alita universe, or Gundam universe as it's also called. You have the mutants, and the mutants have special abilities due to their altered genetics, or altered biology that comes to that altered genetics. And the mutant is the result of mutation, a random unplanned change in the genome. The genetically engineered beings, cyborgs, and AI are for the later topics. Some characters classify as more than one of these types of creatures. Sometimes a mutant can be a cyborg as well. Sometimes they start out as a mutant but are later a cyborg. Today we're going to focus on some of these characters back when they were just mutants. And we're going to talk now more about the characteristics. Shared mutant characteristics of Gundam: usually nocturnal, preferring activity at night. They may feel weakened by daylight, and some are even blind to visible light. Many mutants can have special senses, such as night vision or infrared vision, that make them a little different in their perception than normal people. A normal human eye, unaided. They're usually pale and albino in nature, probably due to the fact that they're only hanging out at night in the sunlight, or they're naturally, genetically albino. They usually live off the same food as humans, but sometimes they have extra or alternate food sources. There's some characteristics in the mutants that vary. They often vary in terms of their appearance and their degeneration. Some have a degenerating appearance that looks less and less human anymore. Like an animal or some kind of deformation. They tend to lose facial characteristics: nose, eyebrows, eyelids, their lips. Their eyes might even appear to be animal eyes, such as slit eyes. You see, say, a predatory bird. They also might develop other characteristics, such as hard and sharpened fingernails, sharpened canine teeth, and permanent changes to the eyes. Some literally engage in cannibalism and or vampirism. In the rare case of several mutants that you see in the manga. When they get adrenaline levels up there, their eyes change to black irises and white pupils. We'll talk more about them later. Some are presumably sterile, while others are implied to reproduce, or at least implied to have multi-generations in their existence. Now there's a few mutants in the manga, and this is the order of their publication history. This is not the chronological order within the Gundam timeline. The first mutant you ever see in publication is the Mutant Woman, followed by Makaku, as he describes in his origin story. So his origin is that of a mutant. Then you hear about the Mole Men. They're not a single woman like Mutant Woman and Makaku. They are a group of mutants that are indigenous to the Midwest, somewhere in the western United States, in what is now desert areas known as the Badlands. And there's another mutant who you see with the Mole Men. His name is Kaos. And then the fifth and final type of mutants you see in the manga publication history is the vampires, or the type V mutants. These are them, and this is the order in which you will learn about these mutants as we go explore them within the manga. The Mutant Woman is the first major antagonist in Battle Angel Alita, and the first mutant you see. She was encountered as Alita was interrupting Ito on his hunter warrior bounty seeking, only to find out that he was not trying to kill an innocent person, he was trying to kill a monster. In this case, Alita discovers her transference abilities by destroying this monstrous woman, and that's that. She is a huge role in the manga of any kind, except that she is the first enemy of Alita that you find, and the first mutant at the same time. She's a serial killer who removed women's heads and faces because she envied their appearance. She envied how their appearances had become degenerative to her own. Her age, her background, her origins are unknown, other than she had blonde hair, tattered clothing, and a horribly deformed face where she had no nose left. Her eyes are slit eyes like a vulture, and her teeth had all gone pointy like she was some kind of wolf or other predator. She had become nocturnal as well. Other than that, she hunted around in the dark, and she had become fairly inhuman by the time they had killed her and collected a type of bounty. Our next mutant is the backstory of the character. Makaku was a cyborg of hideous, monstrous form by the time Alita found him. He essentially cannibalized bodies to make new bodies for himself, as horrifying as it was. But in his discussion of his early life, it is revealed that his origins were that of a mutant. He was in the first volume of the manga, and in the present you only see him in his post-cyborg form, but he was an introduction to the arch-villain Dusty Nova. He began as a mutant. He was stillborn and flushed down the toilet, but he lived and grew in the sewers. And with the basic information about sewers and the massive disease vector that those constitute, it's safe to say that no regular baby would survive that, especially when he wasn't even fully developed to be born.
yet somehow he grew within this filthy environment, eating other filthy waste and garbage he found down there. He's shown here in the manga eating a rat. But somehow this unsanitary environment was not harmful or detrimental to him. And unlike his film and animated counterpart, Grishka, Makaku was not a famous person getting a second life the way they were, as with Grishka in the anime as being a Coliseum champion and Grishka in the live-action film being a former champion of motorball, gaining new life after being killed. He was someone of obscurity, and his base desire was to be known and live on the surface. Now, when Destiny Nova gave him a new life, he granted that wish at a horrible cost where he must consume brains in order to live. And so as we depart our visit and exploration of the mutants with Makaku, let's jump ahead way over to volume 7 where we see two other types. The first one we see in person, although the other one was teased, is that of the Mole Men. The Mole Men are an indigenous group of mutants who have been in the Badlands for a significant amount of time. However, their exact amount of time they've existed out there beyond the walls of the scrapyard, or Iron City as we also call it, is unknown. They may date back from the geocatastrophe of the 21st century. They may even have a history going back to, say, those who were left behind in the formation of the scrapyard. But all that we do know about them is that they are a mysterious group of people who have well adapted and become native to this harsh environment of the Badlands with very little water and very little food, but nonetheless they persist there. They are dwarves, generally ranging from 1 to 1.5 meters high as tall as adults. They're heavily covered in bandages as they suffer the deformations, or facial features are lost. They don't have lips, they don't have eyelids, similar to the Mutant Woman. And their shelters and where they work is often in locations such as the unknown buried city. And we'll have a later video talking about what the unburied city might be, as it is a city that was buried and ruined during the geocatastrophe somewhere in the Midwestern United States. That'll be a later topic, but nonetheless they see in the dark using a type of infrared vision or thermal imaging, see potential prey or obstacles or others of their kind. And, as part of their tradition, or possibly just the fact that they're albino, they're heavily covered in clothing except for their faces. And again, it kind of brings up memories of other nomadic or well-covered people, such as, say, the Tusken Raiders from the Star Wars franchise. During the first encounter with the Mole Men in person, Koyomi mentions them with question marks, indicating that possibly they are, known as some kind of urban legend. Their diet is unknown, but they have a subterranean habitat during the day for the most part, indicating that they would eat whatever's available for them to eat underground, or they go hunting at night when they don't mind being on the surface in the dark.
You don't see them for very long. Last time you ever see them in a series is in the original series in Volume 9, when Chaos calls them to follow him back. And last order, their existence seems to be retconned as Chaos goes and does things by himself. He doesn't have them helping him build very much. So, or maybe they do, it's just off panel, but they just don't seem to be shown anywhere in there. There's a little time, we're going to go see their first encounter with the main characters. Through the mole people, we are introduced to Chaos. And he's revealed to be the biological son of the arch-villain, Destiny Nova. And why is he considered a mutant, as you asked? A number of indicators from the plot show that his existence is unplanned and his special abilities were unknown by Destiny Nova without extensive studying. The other fact is that his father is supposedly unable to reproduce sexually, indicating that somehow it goes against the laws of Zalem as well as his own design that he can somehow reproduce. The timeline shows that Destiny Nova was only out of Zalem for about a year, so without Zalem and without the artificial reproductive equipment known as the DNA organ, Destiny Nova didn't really have a means to reproduce his son except through some miraculous fatherhood that he experienced down below. And the timeline being a little less than a year after his exile, the case that he probably, went about his business not thinking that he would have become a father, but yet he did. And regarding his powers, there's a little special manga page here showing that Destiny Nova has his own little journal. He's saying it's amazing what my son can do. So in all cases, it's likely that his son was to him an unexpected consequence, or whether you want to call it an anomaly or a miracle. It somehow happened. Chaos also has characteristics shared by the Type V mutants or vampires and mole men, in the sense that he has thermal imaging and what he does. He also seems to have a defined ability known as psychometry or psychometry that another mutant seems to have, implied to have, but not necessarily confirmed to have. This other mutant seems to recognize Alita after striking her, which is, similar to him, as he seemed to know Alita's identity from touch. Although, for him, it's a different deal. I mean, he just psychometrically uploaded her memories and abilities into himself. In the case of this other mutant, it's implied, but she was simply fighting with Alita and maybe just recognized, oh, this person looks familiar. It isn't necessarily a data upload the way Chaos does it. And his possibilities with psychometric powers are unknown as to what the limits are. He can even also have pseudo-telepathy in the sense that he communicates with machines. His thoughts travel as radio waves, and the machines read out his thoughts, or his thoughts come out of the machines as if someone were actually speaking to you. Initially. Later on he could speak normally. Which in his sense is maybe a type of altered shock. And I'll talk about altered shock later with the type V mutants or vampires. He also, like the type V mutants or vampires, has the eye changing color, in which his eyes become black irises of white pupils when his adrenaline is up. And just like I said, there's this hearing and his speech coming. He may have experienced a type of altered shock, given that he was in a near-death state right before he was restored to those abilities. The altered shock is a sense of traumatic and suffering advanced trauma, and then the body alters or adapts to that trauma. Kaos has a type of dissociative identity disorder. Initially he had two different personalities, similar to Jekyll and Hyde, where his alternate personality came about from his anger and heightened adrenaline. That alternate personality ultimately took the name of Den. And Den is essentially the opposite of Kaos prior to him evolving further. Den has superhuman strength. Den is enraged. He's very organized and conspiring. Kaos is the opposite. He's fearful, he's disorganized, he's shy. And these two opposites are incomplete parts of the same person, but ultimately they reunite. But the craziest part of all this is that his alter ego, being given a machine body, became essentially an alternate life form, a separate entity. One of the conflicts within the manga is Kaos and his conflict with his own alter ego, Den. And this is the battle for humanity. Kaos was essentially recruited by Alita to help go get rid of Destiny Nova, but he ultimately came into this conflict as a mutant with his alter ego Den. And this conflict and the basis for it is, what should we do about a world where we are rejected, feared, and hated by this world? Should we destroy it, or should we ultimately protect these people as their superiors, as they're taking a moral high ground, making for a future where we both coexist? And you've probably seen this before in other fiction, whether you've heard about the X-Men from Marvel Comics, where it's Magneto versus Xavier, or even in the manga this happens again, out later in the publication history, but it was chronologically before that, in terms of the end of the society, a group of vampires, where two of these type V mutants or vampires fought over whether or not we destroy the humans, or if we were to save them and help them survive into the future. Kaos had that kind of conflict with his alter ego Den, and ultimately at the end Den died and Kaos became a arguably more complete person, because now we can hear and now we can speak normally with sound, but he is still blind, only seeing with the infrared vision. The origin of Kaos is unknown, but it is nonetheless miraculous or an anomaly, hence his name. He is the only known natural-born offspring of a Zolamite, or Destiny Nova. He carries, as we said already, he carries characteristics of the vampires or type V mutants. But his name is the name of the mythological deity of all creation, first of the gods of Greek and Roman myths, Chaos. His name denotes his own miraculous existence, in essence, because the god of his chaos willed himself into existence. Is that he existed in a universe full of disorder and a total mess, but nonetheless he willed himself to exist out of the disorder. In that sense, chaos is a miracle. It's almost as if he willed himself to exist. His father isn't supposed to be capable of biological fatherhood, and yet he did. Further details, about his origin are unknown, but that unknown factor raises plenty of curiosity because his existence is forbidden and supposedly it couldn't happen. Supposedly it's impossible. And now we come upon our final group of these mutants, the vampires, or Type V mutants as they are also known. The Ancient Ones. So within Battle Angel Alita, there's often sci-fi explanations given to concepts we think of as fantasy or supernatural. One example is that werewolves in Gundam are actually, it's the result of a drug or super steroid made by McGill Corp, and McGill used this super steroid on himself to become a werewolf with superhuman strength. And we'll talk about McGill and others later. But in the same vein as werewolves being the result of a special steroids, vampires are a special class of mutant transformed by a virus. The virus is known as mutagenic, highly fatal. It is a type of retrovirus comparable to the flu, or especially in the case of Gundam, it's comparable to hepatitis or HIV in the sense that it is a blood-borne virus. The survivors of the infection become vampiric, and those survivors possess a special biological factor to allow them to have greater survivability when infected. The survivors are also much more likely when they are infected at a younger age. A small child has a far greater chance of surviving the infection than a grown adult or an elderly. Possibly due to when you're a child, you have more growth to go, whereas when you're an adult or you're old, you don't really have much progression and development to go into adulthood. We all get older after all, except for them post-infection, or those who have undergone Methuselahization. The vampires were a number of them before their near extinction, as is the case in the manga, and presumably it will be an extinction once the last one dies. They're usually incapable of reproduction post-infection. Some of them, such as Zapolska, reproduced before his infection, and his health was deteriorating. He was at an older age when first infected, so he didn't turn out too well. He's obviously showing degenerating facial features, like we mentioned with the Mutant Woman, or we mentioned with the Mole Men, where his nose is gone, his eyebrows are gone, can't really close his eyes anymore. His lips are gone, so he covers his face with bandages of all this deformation. He's also suffering from a very slow-acting cancer. Sapolsky also suffered hallucinations, like he had delusions where he was having pain from the cancer and his other illness. So he was like having flashes of his own daughter who died in the geocatastrophe, and he was just, he remembered her out of his sad memory of how he used to have his family before he was transformed. Another one named Morse is suffering from his own degeneration, and his vision just was lost. He became blind. Although Morse didn't have too many deformations, but he was losing his senses. while they're thought of as vampires, they don't conform to the mythical characteristics of vampires. I mean, sunlight doesn't burn them up. They don't change into bats or wolves. They're not scared of crosses. They do cast reflections, and they're usually killed by conventional means. Assuming they have very long survival, such as centuries of age, they can develop secondary mutations. That is often called altered shock or the blessing of Satan in the manga, where they get additional special powers. And in the case of the leader of the society, or Victor Byron, he could turn his skin into steel, making him incredibly durable. The initial transformation from the virus results in mental illness, hallucinations, sense of pain, and there's a survival window of 200 years where there is a heavily increased risk of cancer. So Polska was suffering from cancer. The cancer wasn't progressing very fast. And in some ways, his leader, Victor Byron, allowed him to eat poisoned food. He did it for two reasons. One was to demonstrate the treachery and danger of humans to his younger wife, relatively speaking. She's only 700, 800 years younger than he is. That humans can be bad, as well as a type of mercy killing, since Sapolsky was going completely insane, and they didn't know how to treat his cancer in this situation. So Victor said, well, just let him die sooner. So he ate poisoned food in the company of the grandfather of Arthur Farrell. And we'll talk more about Arthur Farrell when we talk about how the King Arthur legend is put into Battle Angel Alita. The conflict between Type V mutants and the humans ultimately resulted in the sighting of one mutant, Vilma Fakiri, with the humans, and the death of the leader of the society, Victor Byron. Vilma Fakiri was left as the sole surviving vampire, only one of her kind, to exist after this final confrontation and Victor's death in the year ES, or Era Sputnik 126. In the Gregorian calendar, this would be 2083 AD. Vilma Fakiri took on the new identity of Sarula Sanguis, meaning blue blood in Latin, once she awakened from decades of sleep after an apparent execution by Arthur Farrell. The mystery is left with only one of their kind left as to what their legacy and possible connections are. They are now in near extinction, or inevitable extinction, as there are only one surviving specimen. Vilma Fakiri is being tortured in captivity with the ancient Kunslers, or necro-soldiers. In spite of not being classified as such, the mutant known as Chaos carries vampiric characteristics of being pale and having the color-changing eyes. Chaos also has a type of form of altered shock in which he gains speech and gains hearing in spite of not having such since birth. Is it a coincidence that he has the characteristics of a vampire, or is it some kind of genome? We don't know his mother. Maybe she's dead, maybe she's a character we've seen in the manga. We don't know. But going back to what we said about Chaos, it's just a question of his forbidden and supposedly impossible birth. And
fact that his birth is both forbidden and it's also supposedly impossible makes it a curious concept. He's the only child of a Zalamite. Maybe the only child of a certain type of mutant. We don't know. And if does the film have any other secrets to reveal, she's rescued. So in closing, there's going to be some conclusions to this. Conclusion being, mutants play, as you've explored it, they play a significant role and they leave a lot of mysteries when it comes to the world of Battle Angel Alita. Their time goes back a great deal. And regardless of their origins and their differences in the general population, they are part of that world, and hopefully, and how the story goes, is that there comes to be some kind of peace with people on Earth, mutant and non-mutant alike. And it's just important to realize that these people in the scrapyard and those people who aren't are just part of the same people, mutant or not. And
a peace between the mutants and the humans is mankind's next big.
I invite you to like and subscribe for more content, and I just want to thank all those who gave your encouragement in the making of this project. Hope you have a wonderful day. I'll be signing